It's 508, a show about Worcester. Cheers, everybody. It's February 6th, 2018, and this is 508, a show about Worcester. Today we're talking about housing, cryptocurrency, and culture. I'm Mike Benedetti. This is Brendan Milliken.
Over here is Brendan Milliken. How you doing?
And our special guest today is Chad Julian. Hi, Chad. How you doing?
Hello, Worcester.
Chad may be known to people from That's Entertainment, the great comics and pop culture store of Worcester. Maybe known to you from just being an awesome guy of the city of Worcester.
I'm out and about in the city enough. People might know me.
Being
But
awesome.
yes, 5 days a week I'm definitely behind the counter over at That's for the last 10 years. So
Awesome. Well, today we're going to talk about this and that and the other thing. We are on, oh man, I've totally lost my sheet of paper that says what we're on. We are broadcasting on Worcester's Unity Radio 0.0000001 gigawatts of power on 102.9 FM. We are cablecasting on WCCA TV 194, and we are podcasting at pieandcoffee.org. The call-in number is 508-471-5265, and a special shout-out to the mighty Hank Stoltz, who is engineering today's show.
Mike, did you find your place in your notebook there? If not, we can just review last week's show.
I did. That was my place right there.
Okay.
Me sounding like I knew what I was talking about was me reading off a piece of paper, and now we're back to the other part of the show. Brendan Milliken.
While you're in the process of shout-outs, Mike, I just wanted to say congratulations to the city of Philadelphia and its residents on earning their right to burn their own city to the ground. It's been spectacular to watch. I don't pay much attention to football, so I really don't have anything to add on the sporting front, but if anyone knows how to destroy their own city, apparently out of joy, it is the residents of Philadelphia.
I respect it, man. I'm not a big football fan, but when you win it, you got to just go for it, man.
Yeah. Well, it says a lot about a city when you realize that the police department or the Department of Public Works keeps a spare supply of Crisco specifically to grease the light poles to keep people from climbing them. There's lots of, that might have made sense, I don't know, the 20s, 30s, you had some Crisco, you slept, but
I just want to say, I'm not that super into football, but I love Philadelphia so much.
Philadelphia is a great
city. One of my
city,
favorite cities.
But you're going to look at it in a completely different light next time you realize that the protection that the police horses wear is to keep you from getting punched in the face.
I know about Philadelphia. You don't need to tell me about Philadelphia. There's not that much going on with the Worcester City Council this week. They've just sort of had a series of amazingly brief agendas. I don't know what is going on, if this is part of them not wanting to get paid more, if they're just doing less. I don't really understand what the deal is at all there. But one piece of news that I wanted to talk about this week, which is, Brendan, about our topic that we've been trying to understand, which is affordable housing. I read these articles about affordable housing and I don't understand it any better. It's just like, it's just not helping me, man.
So you're going to try and make yourself feel better about that by confusing the audience.
I'm gonna say that, like, you talk to people about city politics sometimes, right? Like, they might have an issue and they come to you and they're like, Brendan, like, I'm trying to figure something out with the city, help me with this. Mm-hmm. And you talk to people and, like, there's a lot of things that you know about city politics that are not obvious, that people don't necessarily know. And every article about city politics doesn't explain what's going on 100%.
Oh, sure.
I mean, today I'm going to read this thing about housing, and it has some quotes from, like, the mayor of Worcester, right? Mm-hmm. And, like, there's nowhere in the article where it explains, like, well, here is actually who the mayor of Worcester is. He has a role which is not what you think of the mayor of a city being, blah, 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 blah.
Right.
It does not go into all this every single time the mayor is quoted in an article. Mm-hmm. But you kind of have to have this context to really understand. If you really wanted to understand housing in Worcester from this article, you would have to have so much context. These things about state housing have none of this context. So I don't really understand. Like, I see these numbers like 1.71 billion. I know what that is as a number, but I don't know what that is in the context of past spending on affordable housing, planned spending, other states spending on affordable housing.
Units of housing, how it gets actually overlaid into mixed-use development, sure.
Yeah, the story that we're talking about, and Nick Neffel has a nice article in the Telegram and Gazette called Statewide Efforts Target Affordable Housing Shortage. The governor proposed a $1.2 or $1.3 billion affordable housing package and some changes in how zoning would be done on the local level. And the State House came back with a $1.7 billion affordable housing bill. The House approved it last week, and it sounds like the Senate is excited about approving it. The article mentions that we are one of only 13% of the cities in the state that are at the 10% guideline for affordable housing. But it says advocates believe there are not enough units to fulfill demand. On any given day, we probably have 10 to 15 people looking for an affordable unit of variable bedroom sizes, and oftentimes people get passed around from agency to agency, which I think is an indication of the lack of affordable housing, said Ellie Gilmore, community organizer for Worcester Common Ground. I know Eleanor Gilmore. We'll probably get her on the show to talk about housing. It talks about
filling all the blanks for us.
it talks about how Shrewsbury is.
Chad, what are you doing here? This is.
Well, wait.
I'm gonna leave.
Wait. So, like, Worcester is like at more than the 10% guideline. It mentions here that like Shrewsbury is at 6% affordable housing, and they just submitted a home rule petition asking that they can count mobile homes as affordable housing, which seems reasonable to me. Again, this is the kind of context where I'm like, why is this not?
Well, maybe I can fill in a tiny bit of blank there. So we have these old guidelines, and they are relatively old and probably do need some updating. And the 10% number you hear thrown around a lot was more or less a guideline. It isn't anything. It was supposed to be, the idea was you hit this 10% number and you're fully eligible for, there's never going to be any questions about state aid or whatnot. It was going to be just one of those metrics that were used to make sure that the Commonwealth as a whole is healthy, based upon all 351 cities and towns reflecting the population the best they could.
Right.
But I've actually heard this, so Worcester is well above that 10% number. And you'll oftentimes hear people who are critical of affordable housing say, well, why isn't Holden have more affordable housing? Or Spencer, or go down the line.
I don't want to have people have to live in Holden.
Yeah.
Let's be clear about that.
Well, so who agrees
Just
with
from a
me?
human rights
And
perspective.
it was a couple of years back during a city council debate, and it was the first time I've really heard it articulated this way. So simple, it should dawn on everybody. The reason cities like Worcester and a lot of gateway cities are well above that number actually makes perfect sense, right? If you were in need of assistance for housing, the likelihood for you to want to live in Petersham is slim to none, because all of the things that go along with potentially being against the ropes and needing assistance on any front are going to be better suited in a city, right? So access to employment, access to public transportation, not needing a car to get everywhere you're going, maybe even access to multiple forms of employment at the same time, just to keep the ship afloat. And in a weird way, like, I think the fact that we have as much affordable housing, and Councilor Rivera totally changed my own mindset, not drastically, but significantly enough where I think that there is a good argument to be made that we should always be looking to raise that number, never lower it, only because it speaks volumes about the character of the city. It's, we're actually doing a good job of taking care of people. You could spin that around, and I'm sure plenty of people would. Well, how good of a job is too good of a job? Maybe we're just enabling people, but that's besides the point. That's a philosophical argument. The argument is, I think, that we do a good job of taking care of people, and we should always look to be doing a better job. That's not to say we can't have a lot of development on market rate housing and above. You can still do that too. But having that number high it seems like a good indicator of health of the community.
This is so this is the thing that I really, really, really don't understand, and where I think that if this was a federal issue, there would at least be some people writing at least superficial things, explaining to me like, here is what your knee-jerk opinion should be about affordable housing. Like, the real problem is blank, right? And people say the real problem is, I don't know, on the right, I'm sure people say the real problem is zoning, the real problem is regulation, or whatever. Like, I haven't seen really good explanations that this is true on the state level. Like, it's not like when I look at like the house, like whatever, Shrewsbury has half as much affordable housing as Worcester or whatever, right? But I don't see like a lot of, I don't know. I don't feel like Worcester is doing like 10 times better or 10 times worse than other cities. And that's where I would expect that if there was some huge thing around, if you did zoning the right way, suddenly everything would become great. Like, I just don't see anybody who's doing it right. That may be true, but so this is why I have no opinion about this.
Yeah, well, I think it's also...
Or I have no informed opinion.
It's potentially also one of those metrics where, I think oftentimes we get in the trap of thinking that you do something, there's going to be an obvious and immediate measurable result. Affordable housing is not necessarily one of those things, right? It's like the need is always going to be predicated on everything from birth rates, influx of immigrants, it's economies of scale. Like, there's so many things that come into play. Just the fact that we go a little bit above and beyond, I think, is a good starting point.
And housing is built across generations. So if you have a lack of a certain kind of housing, it's going to, and you screw up your regulation around it for 50 years, it's going to take you 30 years to fix that problem if you fix your regulations.
And most importantly, to your earlier point, Worcester is keeping people from being forced to live in Holden. And that in and of itself is something that we should celebrate ourselves for on a daily basis.
We should.
Yeah.
We should. Anyway, I just wanted to just say real quick, like the kinds of things that are in this housing bill, which again I think this is H 4108. It's going in front of the Senate soon, and at least this article quotes acting Senate President Harriet Chandler, our state senator, as being excited both about this particular bill. Also, she speaks out in favor of zoning reforms in this. And the zoning legislation is something which I cannot figure out. I don't think it's part of this. I think it's connected to this somehow. I know that the governor had proposed both a housing bill like this as well as some zoning changes last spring. The zoning changes would basically, according to this article, make it so that cities and towns can adopt zoning changes by a simple majority vote instead of a 2/3 supermajority. And so that seems like, again, I have no idea if that's what we need. It seems like the kind of thing that maybe we need. If I could find some information about this topic, maybe I could make up my own mind, but no, I haven't been able to find that information.
Yeah, well, because I think it's one of those things that on the surface you're going to look at and say, yeah, that makes perfect sense. Why can't we change our zoning regs? But it also assumes that you're always going to have benevolent actors when it comes to government that aren't going to make drastic changes to zoning regs that could negatively impact certain populations.
Yeah. So I know that there's people on both the left and the right who would argue either way on this zoning thing. So again, I don't have any opinion. I just look at looking at this thing. I mean, like the kinds of things that are in this housing bill is, for example, this putting $400 million toward the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, the AHTF, which is administered by Mass Housing to create and preserve affordable housing, including permanent and transitional housing for the homeless, and the rehabilitation of public housing, and it can serve moderate income households. Or the Capital Improvement and Preservation Fund, $125 million. Man, I don't understand any of this stuff. Yeah, this is great radio. I know people are really excited to hear